Eustace Kid has arrived on Elbaf and the Giants have no idea what's about to hit them, but it's probably gonna be Kid with his big junk fist. Seeing this crew of all crews arrive at Elbaf is particularly exciting, because Eustace Kid is pure anarchy and there are so many different amazing directions that this could go, some of which may not even involve junk punching at all. Kid might actually be recognized by the Giants as a hero for taking down their #1 enemy, Big Mom. That is definitely something to keep in mind. Kid is very publicly responsible for vanquishing the greatest enemy of the Giants. So as long as he doesn't act like a complete and utter rusty metal scrotum, I feel like at least some of the Giants might be more welcoming of Kid in particular. He might even make some very unlikely allies because, as we know it, Giant society is kinda split. The Giants we're most familiar with are the Old Guard. These are your Dories, your Broggies, the Oimos and all of the Kashis. They were the giant warrior pirates who were quite possibly the most powerful crew of their time. Meanwhile, we also have the next generation of new giant warrior pirates led by Haradin, because they're a bit less than satisfied with the status of large individuals in this world, and their goal is very much to make giants great again. Now, both of these factions are very solid allies of the Straw Hats. However, there is still that pesky third force to consider, which are the upper class of giants, and I think that's actually saying something considering that your lower class of giants are already very upwardly inclined. By which I mean Prince Loki and the actual ruling class of Elbaf. This is where the true power lies, because Loki commands the army of Elbaf, which I need to point out is very different from the pirate crews. The giant warrior pirates were mere scallywags compared to this. The army of Elbaf is a force thought to be capable of toppling any emperor of the sea. In fact, multiple emperors. In fact, everyone, because the world government fears that army even more than they feared the full might of the Whitebeard pirates. I guess what I'm saying is that if Kid were to seduce Prince Loki in a purely platonic pirate-based manner, then he could end up with power greater than that of any existing emperor. And it's not out of the question because the Giants really did not like Big Mom. And you know what they say? The enemy of my enemy is apparently a man made primarily of recycled metals, which would be very exciting because that could potentially lead to a sort of giant civil war. And actually, come to think of it, that's usually how Kingdom Arcs go. The classic example is Alabasta, which had a literal civil war, but there was also a civil dispute in the clouds of Sky Island, a revolution on Fishman Island, a revolt on Dressrosa, and a general FU Orochi on Wano. If Elbaf does turn out to be a substantially chunky arc, then something like that will almost certainly happen. And I think it would be pretty damn exciting to have a member of the worst generation as a fully fledged antagonist. At the moment, Eustace definitely sits more in the anti-hero chair at the very appropriately named Kids table. However, before the end of the series, what I need from him is to actually step up and be Luffy's rival, to make a decent play for becoming the Pirate King. He could be the Whitebeard to Luffy's Roger, just much more angry and much less family-oriented. With all of this said, right now it's a little bit difficult to see Kid being capable of causing much chaos in Elbaf. I think he would, very uncharacteristically, probably be more likely to achieve any menacing intentions through diplomacy. Because what is he going to do against an entire army of giants? I mean, yeah, Kid and Killer are such huge powerhouses that I'm pretty sure they're contracted to supply electricity to several small nations, but those two alone are not enough. And after them, who else have we got? Perhaps Heat and Wire are finally going to do something, provided they're not too busy trying on new corsets, bralettes, and fishnet stockings at their local adult apparel store. And who's left after them? I mean, there are allegedly other members of the crew. In fact, we actually know the names of each of the 31 members of the Kid Pirates. But when Oda revealed them in the SBS of Volume 102, he also specifically stated that they don't really matter, and it's definitely not important to remember this information. So it's kind of like knowing how many blades of grass there are in your backyard. It's a fun fact, but in the grand scheme of things, all it really amounts to is the place where your dog defecates. However, there is one very, very key thing that Kid could achieve on Elbaf. He finds the final poneglyph and becomes the center of everyone's attention. I think it would be pretty interesting if Eustace Kid not only managed to find the final road poneglyph, but steal it. And then when the Straw Hats get to Elbaf, it's all like, Straw Hat, welcome to Giant World. Sadly, if you'd gotten here a few days earlier, then you would probably be the Pirate King by now. However, that dastardly redhead and strange laughing mask man stole our beloved history cube. I like it because this would also be Kid making a serious play, which he needs because right now he is a joke. Seriously, if you even slightly change his colors, he even looks like the Joker. And something people often forget is that Kid is quite the cube connoisseur, because not only does he have a copy of the Wano Road poneglyph, which he was given as a reward for being a good little junk puncher, but he also has the Whole Cake Island one. And this gets confusing because Big Mom herself said that no one has stolen my poneglyph since Roger, but she either lied or didn't know. Because after injuring an unidentified sweet commander who was likely either Snack or Cracker, primarily because Smoothie is very uninjured, and the idea of Kid doing any damage to Katakuri makes me laugh hard harder than Killer with a smile fruit. In either case, after that, they got a copy of Big Mom's poneglyph. So if Kid did manage to find the final one, then that would bring his total to 3, the same as Luffy. And maybe Law. It's a bit vague, but Law likely only has 2 road poneglyphs, which are Wano and Zo. I mean, it's never explicitly stated that he got the Zo one, but the dude was there, and he saw it with his own 2 bread-hating eyes. He might even have the Whole Cake Island one if Robin was generous enough to share it with him, because they have a little bit of a thing going on. But speaking of Law, Kid's gonna have a huge arc, just like Law during Dressrosa. And you know, he might. Kid could have a life-changing adventure on the Island of Giants, filled with fierce action, tragic drama, and the other one, comedy, that's it. He could have all of that, but it's probably going to happen off-screen. I have very little faith in Kid being given the Law treatment, because his entire history was dumped by Oda in the SBS of Volume 104, which I have a video coming out soon covering, because Kid's past is genuinely fascinating. But the fact that it's being covered in an SBS makes me think that a profound Kid-based arc is very unlikely to happen. I mean, Law had essentially 2 whole years dedicated to him during Dressrosa, and given the pace that Oda is looking to wrap up One Piece, I can't see any single character being given that kind of focus. Even the really big figures like Dragon are quite difficult to imagine with this current timeline. So with Kid, look, I think we've got what we've got. I think he is going to start terrorizing the Giants by looking for the man marked by fire. If Soul isn't the mystery ally of Egghead Island, then I think him being the man with the burn scars is increasingly likely. Which is nice, because whether it's now or Elbaf, it looks like we'll be seeing Soul again very soon. In regards to terrorizing the island though, something I think Oda did very well was conveying the unusual caution of the Kid Pirates when they caught sight of Elbaf, because Killer said, "Get up, Kid, we've reached land. Shall we disembark?" And then Kid was all like, "Mate, what is this shall we business? What could possibly make me, Junk Man, hesitate?" And then Killer said, "Well, because I'm pretty sure this is Elbaf." And judging by his facial expression, I'm pretty sure that Kid either soils himself in excitement or terror at the thought of exploring Elbaf. Either way, those pants are ruined. And I do like Killer's approach here with the whole, dude, we actually need to be careful for a change. One thing I would really love for either Kid or the Straw Hats is for them to visit the old sheep's house if it still exists. It doesn't need to be anything huge or amazing, maybe even just seeing it in the background of a single panel, but something that neatly and subtly rounds out the rotund tale of Big Mom. You know, thinking about it, the name Sheep's Houses is quite sinister, because it has that double meaning of Carmel breeding and selling her livestock. By the way, this giant here is a very young girl. However, very strangely, we still don't know who this second child is. So I thought it was Stanson for quite a while because his helmet is similar, but Stanson actually appears as a child later. And the only reason I point out this mystery kid is because all of the giant children so far have gone on to be very important characters, many of whom forming the new giant warrior pirates, becoming part of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, and also helping to transport all of the books from Ohara. So why didn't this kid join the crew as well? What's his story? In fact, what's his name? Well, according to the One Piece wiki, his name is Quintuple ? So just remember that, because Quintuple ? Will almost certainly play a role in the eventual Elbaf arc. Also, for another fun fact, in the anime there is an extra orphan at the sheep's house, a fox mink. This character is not present in the manga, and I imagine that he was added to seed Big Mom's dream of uniting all of the world's races because as a child she experienced sharing a table with them. Although in the end all the anime really did was provide Big Mom with an extra side dish. But I have never had an excuse to talk about the non-canon fox mink, so I had to get that off my chest. Next question. This isn't related to Kid. Well, what? Well, then I'm not reading it. In fact, how dare you? This is meant to be the Kid video. Can't believe this. Here's a wild theory. They find the origins of the giant robot we saw on Egghead. Kid finds more of the same bots and can control them with his DF. I'm not sure about finding more of the Ancient Kingdom tech in Elbaf of all places, but I really do like the idea of Kid controlling one of them. He wouldn't even need to find the ancient fuel source. He could just hop in and use his devil fruit powers to pilot it like a real mech. And I suppose it could be a great way to actually fight against giants. Although Kid can already do that to some degree by like making his big metal fist. And speaking of, I remember when Luffy used Gear 3rd for the first time, it was a mind-blowing event for the fanbase reading weekly. Almost like the equivalent of what Gear 5th did recently, because it was such an absurd yet cool thing to happen. But the bigger realization that dawned on all of us was, oh, this is how Luffy is going to be able to fight against giants, which went on to immediately be put into use in the very next arc against Oars, but also came to fruition during Marineford. Luffy's opening attack was knocking out a giant with gear 3rd. It was so cool. And according to the One Piece wiki, that giant's name is also quintuple question mark, so that must be a bit of a popular name on Elbaf. You know, maybe it's a cultural thing. If so, I apologize. I am but ignorant Western swine, and my knowledge of Elbaf is sorely lacking. I mean, I even spell Elbaf with an F, but did you know it's Elbaf with a PH? So I did know that, but it's a little more complicated because the spelling of Elbaf changes depending on how you consume One Piece. In the manga, it's Elbaf with a PH. However, in the Funimation dub, it's Elbaf with an F. And meanwhile, in the Cursed Odex dub, it is spelled Erhab. I spell it with an F because I believe that Funimation should be trusted over Viz in certain cases. Cases like this one. Because the only reason why Viz spells Elbaf with a PH is because it was translated that way during Little Garden. Back when the official translation was deemed so poor that the man who would go on to become the official translator did his own free translations of the first 53 volumes. Although it should be noted that even he had a different take, choosing to spell the island as Elbaf. So Elbaf with the PH is more of a relic of the old days, kind of like how Zoro to this very day is still translated as Zolo. It's all done for continuity, which is why Funimation is the more reliable source to me on this issue, because they came into the game much later with a greater understanding of the series. And just because I'm curious, I'm going to ask this, let me know what you think in the comments, but do you think that anyone would care if more than 100 volumes into a series, Viz just changed Zolo to Zoro? Because I think it would be a very rare person who goes, hey, I thought it was Zolo. Now the continuity is ruined, and I will never read manga again. But in conclusion, I'm looking forward to Kid doing a thing on the island full of really big people, because that's what the video was about.